Single mom mistakes. A CEO for a waiter on her first flight. His secret changes everything. The morning light over Denver International Airport was pale and cold, glinting off the patches of snow that hadn't melted overnight. Nora Bennett clutched the worn strap of her second-hand carry-on as if it were a lifeline. Her hands shook, not from the cold, but from nerves. At 30, she was about to board a plane for the first time in her life. Her 7-year-old son, Evan, had waved from her mother's porch an hour earlier, his pajama sleeve slipping down as he shouted, "Call me when you land, Mommy." She'd promised she would, though she still wasn't sure she'd survive the trip. Inside the terminal, the air smelled of espresso and jet fuel. Passengers rushed past her in practiced strides, wheeling sleek suitcases that seemed to know where they were going. Nora stopped to check her printed ticket again, Gate C14, 9:10 a.m., and tried to ignore the growing knot in her stomach. This flight to San Francisco wasn't just a trip. It was her chance to interview for a marketing position at Etheris Air, the company she'd dreamed of working for. One yes could change everything. Steady income, real insurance, maybe even a separate bedroom for Evan. When she bent to pick up her dropped boarding pass, the zipper of her bag burst open. A small avalanche of papers, crayons, and a half-eaten granola bar spilled across the floor. Heat rose in her cheeks as businessmen stepped around her. Then a calm voice said, "Here, let me help." She looked up to see a tall man kneeling beside her. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, the kind of look that didn't belong behind a counter, but on his chest was a tag that read, "Theo," logo of the coffee stall nearby. He handed her a travel-sized notebook and a pack of crayons. "Artists on board?" he asked with an amused tilt of his brow. "My son," Nora said quickly, tucking the crayons away. "He likes to draw dragons while I, work double shifts." Theo smiled, standing to close her suitcase with one practiced motion. "Dragons are good company. Coffee?" She hesitated. "I probably shouldn't. Too expensive in airports." "Then it's on me." He turned, poured a steaming cup, and handed it to her. "For courage. Everyone's first flight needs a warm start." "Thank you," she said, accepting it like a fragile gift. "You really don't have to. Consider it an investment in takeoff success." He winked, and the tension in her shoulders loosened just a little. They talked for a moment about the snowstorm heading east, about how crowded the airport felt before the holidays. When the loudspeaker called her group, Nora scrambled to gather her things. Theo leaned lightly on the counter. "Have a good flight, Miss Bennett." Nora Bennett. "Safe skies, Ms. Bennett." As she walked toward the gate, she told herself it was silly to feel grateful for a stranger's kindness. But the warmth of the cup between her palms steadied her heartbeat. The cabin of the Boeing 737 smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air. She found her seat, 14C by the window, and wrestled her carry-on into the overhead bin. It refused to close. No matter how she pushed, the latch stayed stuck. A line of impatient passengers formed behind her. Her pulse pounded. Then someone's shadow fell across the aisle. "Let me," a familiar voice said. She turned. Theo. Not in a cafe apron now, but in the same rolled-sleeve shirt, jacket folded over one arm. He adjusted her bag, shifted a smaller one aside, and the compartment clicked shut effortlessly. "You again?" she said, half laughing, half embarrassed. "Couldn't let you lose your first flight record before takeoff," he replied. His smile was easy, unhurried, the kind that calmed the people around him. When he moved toward the front, Nora noticed a subtle difference. The way other passengers made space for him, the nod one flight attendant gave that seemed almost deferential. But she dismissed the thought. Maybe he just flew often. Minutes later, the engines hummed to life. Nora pressed her forehead to the window, watching the runway blur into white light. The cabin tilted upward, and her stomach lurched. She gripped the armrest so hard her knuckles turned pale. A soft voice beside her said, "Deep breaths. The first 5 minutes are the worst." Theo had reappeared, crouching beside her seat with a small paper napkin. "Your coffee survived takeoff," he said, placing it on her tray. She managed a shaky smile. "You seem very experienced at this." "Occupational hazard," he said simply. "I spend more time in the air than on the ground." As the plane climbed through layers of cloud, Denver shrank to a patch of gray far below. Nora let out a long breath, not realizing she'd been holding it. Theo glanced at her, then toward the aisle where a mother soothed her crying toddler. His expression softened. "See?" he murmured. "Once you stop fighting the air, it carries you." For a moment, turbulence jostled the cabin, and she instinctively reached for the nearest steady thing, his hand resting on the armrest. He didn't move, just gave a reassuring nod. When the plane steadied, she pulled back, cheeks warm. "Sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," he said quietly. "Everyone needs a little grounding when they're learning to fly." Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the wings. Nora turned to the window again, unaware that the man who'd handed her coffee and kindness carried a name that could change her life more than this flight ever would. The plane leveled at 30,000 feet, a steady hum filling the cabin. Nora had never heard a sound so strange. It was like the earth itself had gone silent beneath her. She leaned back against the seat, trying to convince her body that floating through the air in a metal tube was perfectly safe. Theo sat 2 rows ahead in the business section, visible just enough that she could see the corner of his shoulder when he moved. She kept catching herself glancing up. Why was he even there? He looked too relaxed, too composed to be a simple cafe worker catching a cheap flight. 20 minutes later, when the flight attendants rolled carts down the aisle, Nora finally unclenched her hands. She tried to read the in-flight magazine but found herself studying the clouds instead. When a familiar voice spoke beside her, she almost jumped. "Miss Bennett, right?" Theo was standing in the aisle, balancing a cup of cappuccino in one hand. "You left this behind earlier. Thought you might still want it warm." She blinked. "You're everywhere." He smiled. "Just good timing." He handed her the cup and crouched slightly to meet her eyes. "Still nervous?" "Maybe a little," she admitted. "I didn't think flying would feel this unnatural." "You get used to it," he said. "I did eventually. The air only feels dangerous until you trust it to hold you." His calm tone surprised her. "You must travel a lot." "Almost live on planes," he replied. "Occupational hazard." "Must be exhausting," she said. He looked at her for a beat, as if he'd heard something deeper in her words. "Sometimes," he said softly. "But it reminds me where I started." Before she could ask what that meant, the aircraft gave a sharp jolt. Her coffee sloshed against the lid. Gasps rippled through the cabin. The plane trembled again, more violently this time, and the seatbelt sign blinked red. A baby started crying somewhere in the back. Theo grabbed the overhead compartment, steadying it with one arm as a suitcase shifted inside. "Keep your belt fastened," he told her calmly. The intercom crackled with the pilot's voice announcing unexpected turbulence. Then the plane dipped hard. Nora's heart leapt into her throat. One of the flight attendants stumbled, reaching for the nearest seat. Passengers, please put on your oxygen masks if they drop, she began, but her words vanished in the next wave of shaking. The ceiling panels popped open, and yellow masks dangled like vines. Nora froze, fingers shaking too much to pull hers down. Theo moved quickly. Here, like this. He guided the elastic strap over her head, his voice steady even as the cabin lights flickered. Breathe normally. You're all right. Her breathing came fast and shallow. Is it supposed to feel like this? It'll pass, he said, adjusting his own mask. You're safe. Through the small window, she saw the wings tilt, slicing through thick gray clouds. Lightning flashed in the distance. Every muscle in her body wanted to scream, but Theo's presence anchored her. Around them, passengers clung to seats, whispering prayers. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the turbulence eased. The plane steadied, the hum returning to normal. Nora realized her hand was still gripping Theo's sleeve. She let go immediately. Sorry, she mumbled. He shook his head. No need. Happens to everyone their first time. The intercom came alive again, the captain apologizing for the rough patch and assuring them it was over. Laughter of relief spread through the cabin. The lights brightened. A flight attendant rushed over with napkins. Theo took one, gently dabbing a splash of coffee from Nora's sleeve. You handled that better than most, he said. Hardly, she said, half laughing, half trembling. I thought we were going to fall, he finished. You didn't. That's what matters. When the attendant moved on, she noticed how respectfully she addressed him. Mr. Lang, she started, then caught herself. Sir, are you okay? Theo nodded. I'm fine. Please check the rest of the cabin. Nora frowned. Mr. Lang? Something about the way the woman had said it lingered in her mind. She wanted to ask, but Theo had already turned back to her, his expression gentle again. First flights are like first steps, he said. You only remember how scary it was after you've landed. She smiled weakly. I hope the landing comes soon. It will, he said. And when it does, you'll wonder why you were ever afraid. He straightened, ready to return to his seat. Try to enjoy the view, he added, nodding toward the window. Outside, the storm clouds broke apart, revealing a stretch of dazzling blue. Sunlight spilled over the wing, bright and impossible. Nora pressed her hand to the glass, watching the light shimmer. Theo lingered for a moment longer, as if wanting to say something else, then quietly returned to the front. Nora followed him with her eyes until he disappeared beyond the curtain separating first class. Only then did she realize she was still holding the napkin he'd handed her, a small square of white, faintly scented with coffee and something like cedar wood. For the first time since takeoff, she smiled. Maybe flying wasn't just about leaving the ground. Maybe it was about trusting that, somehow, someone would be there to steady you when the air turned rough. By the time the plane touched down in San Francisco, Nora's palms were damp from gripping the armrest too tightly. The landing felt smoother than she expected, but her heart hadn't quite caught up. She waited for most passengers to file out before standing, retrieving her carry-on carefully this time. When she turned toward the aisle, she caught a glimpse of Theo speaking with a flight attendant near the front. They seemed familiar, even comfortable, like co-workers rather than strangers. The attendant smiled at him and said something that made Nora pause. Mr. Langford, your car is waiting outside. Her breath caught. Langford. The name echoed in her head like a dropped coin hitting tile. Theo Langford. The same last name printed on every page of Atheris Air's company website. The same man whose face appeared beside the words, Chief Executive Officer. He turned slightly, eyes meeting hers. For a second, she hoped there was another explanation, that maybe Langford was just a coincidence. But the recognition in his gaze said otherwise. He started toward her, calm as ever. "You're," she began, voice too tight. "Theo Langford," he said quietly, as if confessing a secret instead of stating a fact. "I was going to tell you before we landed." Her throat closed. "You're the CEO of Aetheris." He nodded. "Yes." She took a step back, clutching her bag strap. "So this," she gestured between them, "was what? Some kind of corporate experiment? Test the nervous single mom before her interview?" "No," he said quickly. "Nora, it wasn't like that. I wasn't there to—" "You knew who I was," she cut in. "You said you travel all the time. You sat with me, listened to my life story, and didn't bother to mention you run the company I'm hoping will hire me." His jaw tightened. "I didn't plan it. I was visiting one of our training hubs in Denver. I saw your name on the passenger list, realized you were interviewing here, and thought—" "You thought what?" she asked bitterly. "That it would be fun to watch me panic about my first flight? That maybe you'd appreciate having someone nearby who understood what you were facing," he said, voice low. "That maybe kindness didn't have to come with a business card attached." Her pulse hammered. "That's not kindness, Mr. Langford. That's manipulation wrapped in manners." She hated the way her voice trembled, hated how small she suddenly felt. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're right. I should have told you sooner. When you looked at me in that cafe, you didn't see a CEO. You saw a person, and I didn't want that to change." "Well, it has." She brushed past him toward the exit, blinking fast to clear the sting in her eyes. The terminal air felt heavier than it should, every step echoing her anger. She didn't look back, not even when she heard him call softly, "Nora, please." Outside, the wind smelled of sea salt and jet exhaust. She tightened her coat and joined the line for a taxi. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "Evan's drawing airplanes again. He says you'll come back flying like a superhero." That nearly broke her resolve. She swiped away a tear before the driver noticed. The hotel room felt sterile and too bright. She dropped her bag on the bed and sat by the window, watching planes lift off in steady rhythm. Her reflection in the glass looked tired, older. "Smart move, Nora," she muttered, "telling off your potential boss." But deep down, something else stirred. Disappointment that ran deeper than fear of losing the job. For those few hours in the air, she had believed in the version of Theo who listened without judging, who steadied her hand during chaos. She wasn't sure which one was real anymore. The next morning dawned gray and wet. Still, she arrived at Aetheris headquarters on time for her interview. If she'd learned anything in 7 years of single motherhood, it was that pride didn't pay rent. She walked into the glass tower, greeted the receptionist, and waited in the lobby. Her heart dropped when Theo stepped out of the elevator. He looked different in a charcoal suit, every inch the executive now. "Ms. Bennett," he said, as though they hadn't shared turbulence and coffee 24 hours ago. "Good morning." "Mr. Langford." Her voice was steady this time. "I'll be sitting in on your interview," he said, tone formal. "Hope that's all right. I don't think I have a choice, do I?" A hint of a smile tugged at his mouth, though his eyes remained cautious. "You always have a choice, especially here." As she followed him into the conference room, a flicker of confusion crossed her mind. For a man accused of control, he didn't seem eager to use it now. The storm outside intensified, rain streaking down the glass like threads of silver. Nora squared her shoulders, ready to prove she could stand her ground, even if the ground kept shifting beneath her. She didn't know yet that this was only the first storm she'd have to face with him. The elevator doors closed behind them with a quiet hiss, sealing Nora inside a gleaming capsule of glass and steel. Through the transparent wall, the city stretched below, a blur of wet streets and umbrellas. Her reflection stared back at her. Neatly pressed blazer, trembling hands hidden inside her sleeves. Theo Langford stood beside her, calm as always, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a folder. "You'll do fine," he said without looking at her. "I'm not here to make this harder." "You already have," she muttered. The elevator chimed, and the doors opened to reveal the 28th floor. The space looked nothing like the humble coffee shop where she had first met him. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline. Etheris Air's logo gleamed on the wall, wings outstretched. Nora followed Theo into the conference room, where 3 executives waited behind a glass table. Their smiles were polite, but distant. Theo took a seat at the far end, his expression unreadable. The interview began with the usual questions: her background, her experience with marketing on a small budget, her time managing 2 jobs. She answered as clearly as she could, keeping her voice steady. She avoided looking at Theo. Then the man in the middle, a senior vice president named Harris, leaned forward. "Ms. Bennett, how do you handle stress?" She thought of rent due dates, of Evan's fevers, of nights she'd spent cleaning coffee machines until sunrise. "By remembering why I started," she said. "And who's counting on me to keep going?" Harris nodded but looked unconvinced. Another woman asked, "If you were tasked with improving Etheris's family outreach, what would your first step be?" Nora hesitated only for a second before answering. "Families travel differently. Parents want safety, kids want excitement. I'd design a campaign called Etheris for Families, highlight destinations with flexible pricing, play zones in terminals, meals for kids, things that show we understand real people, not just frequent flyers." The panel exchanged glances. For the first time, Theo spoke. "And what inspired that idea?" His tone was calm but probing. Nora lifted her chin. "My son, Evan. He's 7. He's the reason I'm here. I want him to see that his mom can still take off, even if she's afraid of falling." The silence that followed was long enough for her heartbeat to fill it. Then a low rumble of thunder rolled outside. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Someone cursed under their breath. The windows glowed faintly from the storm, but the room fell into a half-darkness. A voice from the hallway shouted, "Backup generators delayed!" "Should we reschedule?" one of the executives asked. Theo shook his head. "No, we can continue." He stood, unbuttoning his jacket, and moved toward the window where the light was strongest. "I'll get a lamp," he said, then turned to Nora. "Unless you're uncomfortable?" "I've done job interviews in coffee shops with broken heaters," she said. "This is luxury." The faintest smile crossed his face. Someone brought in a small emergency lantern, setting it on the table. The glow softened the edges of everyone's faces, making the scene feel strangely intimate. Theo gestured toward her. "Tell us what makes you different from the hundreds of applicants we see every year." Nora took a breath. "I know what it means to be afraid and still move forward," she said slowly. "When you're a single mother, every day feels like turbulence. But you keep your seatbelt fastened, you breathe, and you hope the landing will be worth it. That's what I'd bring to Etheris. A voice for the passengers who don't always feel they belong in the sky." The room went silent again. Outside, rain lashed the windows. Theo's gaze held hers, something flickering behind his composed expression. Recognition, maybe even admiration. When the power returned with a soft hum, the executives exchanged quiet nods. "Thank you, Ms. Bennett," Harris said. "We'll be in touch." Nora gathered her folder, hands still trembling, and turned to leave. At the door, she heard Theo's voice. "Ms. Bennett." She stopped but didn't turn around. "The storm outside will delay most flights. I can have a car take you back." "That's not necessary," she said. "I'm used to finding my own way." He hesitated, then replied softly, "So am I." As she stepped into the hallway, the faint scent of coffee reached her again, pulling her back to the morning before all of this. For a moment, she wondered if kindness could ever truly exist without expectation. But then she remembered her son's voice on the phone the night before. "You'll fly, right, Mommy?" Outside the glass walls, lightning split the sky in two, illuminating the city below. Nora exhaled slowly, steadying herself. She didn't know if she'd get the job, but she knew one thing. The storm had already tested her, and she was still standing. That night, the rain over San Francisco didn't stop. It poured down the hotel windows in steady lines, blurring the city lights into smudges of gold. Nora sat on the edge of her bed, laptop open, half watching the local news while trying to calm her nerves. Her interview replayed in her head over and over. The questions, her answers, the flickering lights, and the look in Theo Langford's eyes before she left the room. Then, suddenly, his face appeared on the television screen. "Breaking news," the headline read. "Etheris Air CEO pretends to be airport worker for secret employee experiment." A short video clip followed, shaky phone footage from the Denver terminal. It showed Theo at the cafe counter pouring coffee, helping her pick up her bag, smiling. Then the segment cut to a voiceover calling it a marketing stunt gone wrong. Nora's stomach dropped. The footage had been filmed without her knowing, and the anchor was narrating her own humiliation to the entire city. Her phone buzzed with a flood of messages, some from people at the diner where she used to work, others from numbers she didn't recognize. "Is that you on TV? He played you. Guess CEOs get bored too." She shut the screen off and pressed her palms against her face. She'd trusted a stranger. Again. A knock at the door startled her. She ignored it at first, but it came again, softer this time. "Nora," a familiar voice called. "It's me." She opened the door halfway. Theo stood there, soaked to the shoulders, rain dripping from his coat. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "People already think I was part of your publicity trick." "It wasn't a trick," he said, voice low. "And that video wasn't supposed to exist. Someone from the marketing team must have leaked it." "And why were you even playing barista in the first place?" she demanded. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me?" He looked down, water pooling at his feet. "I was visiting the training hub at Denver. My mother used to work there, cleaning floors, emptying trash. I used to help her after school. That cafe was her favorite place. The owner asked me to step behind the counter for old time's sake. I said yes, and then I saw you." Nora stared at him, still breathing hard. "You expect me to believe that?" He nodded once. "You dropped your boarding pass. You looked terrified. It reminded me of her, my mother. She was afraid of flying too. But she told me once that people like us were meant to face what scares us most. So I helped. That's all it was." She folded her arms. "Then why not tell me the truth on the plane?" "Because when you looked at me, you didn't see a CEO. You saw someone human, and I was selfish enough to want that moment a little longer." His voice softened. "You weren't part of any experiment, Nora, but I'm sorry that you're paying for my mistake." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the rain filled the silence, steady and relentless. "Why do you care so much?" she asked finally. "Because," he said quietly, "you reminded me of why I built this company. To give second chances. To make sure people like my mother didn't disappear in the background." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. It was a brochure, the edges damp from the rain. "Clara Foundation Second Wings Program," it read. Below the logo were photos of women in uniforms, flight attendants, technicians, trainees, all smiling. "That's the program we've been developing," Theo explained. "Training single parents and low-income workers for aviation careers. It's been my mother's dream since she passed. The board doesn't even know I've launched it quietly." Nora ran her thumb over the photo of a woman holding a child beside an airplane door. "Why show me this?" she asked. "Because I want you to see what we're trying to build," he said, "and because I want you to lead it." She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You think anyone will take me seriously now? The whole city just watched me being your charity case." "That's not what they saw," he said. "They saw a woman who treated a stranger with respect when she thought he was a nobody. That's the kind of leadership I want here." His sincerity disarmed her, but she shook her head. "I need time. I don't even know if I can forgive you." "I'll wait," he said simply. "But don't let the noise decide your worth." When he turned to leave, Nora stopped him. "Your mother," she said softly. "Clara, was she the reason you chose the name Second Wings?" He nodded. "She used to say everyone deserves a second flight, even after a rough landing." After he left, Nora sat by the window, the city's neon lights reflected in the rain. She unfolded the brochure again and traced the words, "Second Wings." Outside, thunder rolled over the bay. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but something in her chest had shifted. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't just surviving. She was beginning to understand what it meant to take off again. 2 days later, the rain finally broke. Sunlight poured across the bay, dazzling the glass facade of Aetheris headquarters. But for Nora, the storm hadn't passed. Every news outlet still carried the same story. CEO's airport stunt, single mom unwittingly involved. The comments online were worse. Some pitied her, others mocked her. She hadn't answered a single call from Theo since that night. Her mother told her to come home, but she couldn't. Not yet. She refused to let humiliation be the last thing her son remembered when he asked how her big interview went. That morning, an email from Aetheris appeared in her inbox. Subject, invitation, press conference at 2 p.m. Her stomach twisted. The message was short. "We would appreciate your presence, Ms. Bennett. It concerns the recent incident." Signed, Theo Langford. By noon, she stood outside the building's marble entrance, unsure why she'd come. Reporters swarmed around the steps, cameras already aimed at the glass doors. A security guard ushered her inside, leading her to a side hallway near the stage. Through the tinted panel, she could see Theo at the podium, calm but serious. The murmur of the crowd filled the atrium like static. When the microphones clicked on, Theo's voice echoed through the hall. "Before we begin," he said, "I owe someone an apology." Every reporter leaned forward. He paused, scanning the room, and then looked directly toward the glass where she stood hidden. "2 weeks ago, I met a passenger named Nora Bennett. She believed I was a cafe employee because that's exactly how I was acting, because I wanted to understand, firsthand, the experiences of those who serve and those who travel with us. What she didn't know was that her kindness that morning reminded me of why this company was founded. A ripple of whispers passed through the crowd. He continued, his tone steady. When that video leaked, it distorted something genuine into something staged. Ms. Bennett was never part of a stunt. She treated me with respect when she thought I was at the bottom of the ladder, not the top. I failed to protect her privacy, and for that, I take full responsibility. The flashes began, camera shutters clicking like rain. Theo didn't flinch. To every employee who thinks their work goes unseen, and to every parent balancing two worlds just to stay afloat, you are the heart of this company. And starting today, Etheris Air will fund Second Wings, a new program dedicated to single parents in the workforce. Its first director will be Ms. Nora Bennett, if she'll accept. The room exploded in murmurs. Nora's breath caught. She hadn't agreed to anything. The security guard beside her whispered, "They want you on stage." She shook her head at first, then realized all eyes were turning toward the side doors. She could leave and let the moment define her, or step forward and reclaim it. When she walked out, the noise softened. Theo moved aside, giving her the podium. The cameras found her face instantly. For a moment, she froze under the lights. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I didn't expect my first flight to change my life," she said. "And I didn't expect it to be public either." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. But maybe that's the point. Some of us spend years waiting for the right conditions. Less wind, less fear, fewer eyes watching. The truth is, sometimes the air will always be rough. You just fly anyway. Her words hung in the air, steady and raw. She turned to Theo briefly. "Mr. Langford made a mistake. So did I, by assuming the worst before asking the truth. But I've learned that forgiveness can also be a form of flight." Applause began softly, then grew until the atrium echoed with it. Reporters surged forward shouting questions, but Nora stepped back from the podium. Theo leaned closer and whispered, "I didn't expect you'd come." "I almost didn't," she said. "But I figured someone should tell the truth from both sides." Outside, the afternoon light blazed against the glass walls. As they walked off the stage together, she heard a reporter shout, "Ms. Bennett, are you joining the program?" She stopped, looked back once, and answered, "Yes, because sometimes second chances deserve someone who knows what it's like to need one." Theo smiled faintly, relief flickering across his usually guarded face. "Thank you," he said under his breath, "for trusting the air again." Nora exhaled slowly, feeling the weight that had followed her since Denver lift just a little. Somewhere above the city, a plane cut through the clouds, bright and unshaken. For the first time, she didn't look at it with fear, but with recognition. A month later, the San Francisco sky glowed with early spring light. The storm of headlines had quieted, replaced by something different: curiosity, even admiration. "Single Mom Leads CEO's New Program for Parents," one article read. Another showed a photo of Nora beside a group of trainees wearing Etheris Air badges under the banner "Second Wings Orientation Day." Nora stood at the front of the classroom now, watching 12 men and women introduce themselves, each carrying their own story of scraped knees and second chances. "I know the feeling," she said, her voice steady but warm. "Balancing work, kids, and the fear that you're falling behind. This program isn't just about jobs. It's about proving that your story isn't over." The room quieted. Some smiled, some wiped their eyes. Theo was standing near the back, hands in his pockets, listening without interrupting. When she finished, the class applauded softly. Afterward, as the trainees filed out for lunch, Theo approached her. "You were right about using personal experience in the training sessions," he said. "It connects people faster than any manual could." "I wasn't trying to prove a point," she replied, straightening a stack of files. "Just telling the truth. That's exactly what makes it work." He smiled faintly. "You've turned a PR disaster into a foundation for something real." "Don't remind me," she said with a laugh. "I still can't walk through an airport without someone recognizing me. At least now they're calling you the woman who inspired Second Wings, not the coffee girl." She rolled her eyes. "I'll take that." They walked together through the hallway toward the observation deck. The view opened up over the runways, planes taxiing beneath the afternoon sun. Theo rested a hand on the railing. "Do you remember your first flight?" he asked. "Every second of it," she said, "especially the part where I almost broke your arm during turbulence." "You had a strong grip," he said, smiling. "I've learned not to underestimate first-time flyers." She turned to face him, her tone softening. "And I've learned that not every rough flight means a crash." He met her gaze quietly, something unspoken passing between them. They didn't talk for a moment, just stood watching a plane lift into the air. The engines roared, sunlight flashing across its wings. "You know," Theo said, breaking the silence, "my mother used to say airports are proof that people still believe in leaving the ground, even when it scares them." "Your mother sounded wise," Nora said. "She was," he replied. "She would have liked you." Her phone buzzed, Evan's name glowing on the screen. She answered immediately. "Hey, buddy." His voice came bright and excited through the speaker. "Mom, guess what? My teacher said our class is visiting the airport next week. Can you show me the planes?" "I think I can arrange that," she said, glancing at Theo. "Tell her I'll bring the cool CEO." Evan laughed. "Okay, but he has to bring snacks." "Deal," Theo said loudly enough for him to hear. When the call ended, Nora tucked the phone into her bag. "He's obsessed with airplanes now," she said. "Can't imagine why." "Maybe because his mom made them feel safe," Theo replied. They walked back toward the lobby, passing a new mural being painted on the wall. It showed wings made of handprints, one in every color, beneath the words, "Second Wings. Everyone deserves to fly again." Nora paused to watch an artist fill in the final strokes. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "It's you," Theo said quietly. She shook her head. "It's us." As evening fell, the staff began packing up, and the office lights dimmed one by one. Theo lingered by the glass doors, holding them open for her. "Going home?" he asked. "Always," she said. "Evan's waiting with dinner, spaghetti night. Then I'll walk you to your car." "You don't have to." "I know," he said, "but I want to." Outside, the air smelled of jet fuel and salt. A distant plane thundered into the sky. They stopped by her car, the silence between them easy now. "So," Theo said, slipping his hands into his coat pockets, "are you afraid of flying anymore?" She smiled. "Not really. I figured out something." "What's that?" "It's not about the height," she said. "It's about who's sitting next to you when the air gets rough." For a long second, they just stood there. The city lights shimmered on the hood of her car. Then she reached into her bag and handed him a small envelope. "Evan made this for you." He opened it carefully. Inside was a crayon drawing, 2 airplanes side by side, one labeled Mom, the other Mr. Theo, with a bright yellow sun above them. Across the top, in uneven letters, it said, "We're flying again." Theo looked up, his smile softening. He's quite the artist. Takes after his mom, she said, and maybe his pilot, he added. As Nora drove away, Theo stood watching until her taillights disappeared into the dusk. The sky above the runway turned gold, then deep blue. A plane ascended through the fading light, leaving a silver trail behind. For the first time in years, Theo felt something he hadn't since his mother's passing: peace. And for Nora Bennett, the woman who had once feared the air, it wasn't just about flight anymore. It was about trust, courage, and finding someone who would steady your wings when life got turbulent. If this story touched your heart, share it so someone else can believe in second chances too.